Hey guys, nice to see you guys again and be able to do this weird video interaction that we've talked about week after week. This is, I believe, our third or fourth one of these, but we're glad to see you, glad to have you here. I'm Noah Lowerton. If anybody that doesn't know me, I work part-time for Young Life. I've been leading at Radford for the last 4 or 5 years. Kind of hard to keep track sometimes, but it's been involved with them and been able to have the chance to do these things. So what we've been talking about this entire semester so far, and we'll continue to talk about, is a long story, a story that God has written about Jesus that we get to have roles in, that we get the chance to participate in, but inevitably it's a story about Jesus. So that's what we're going to continue to talk about, is who Jesus is, the life that he lived, clearing up any misconceptions that you guys might have so that we can better understand who he is without any biases or personal decisions on that. We can just look at it and talk about it together, wherever that may be, whether it's dorm room, restaurants, anywhere that we can. And so we've been covering a little bit the life of Jesus, and when I was thinking about this, I was hanging out with some friends the other night. We were over at their house, and this is just a funny situation that happened when I think everybody in the world's seen High School Musical, right? At this point, it's pretty common for a lot of people to have seen this. So we're over at our friend's house, and we're just talking about movies that people have seen, movies that people haven't seen. And one of our friends said, "Oh yeah, I've never seen these." And so our other friend lost it. It's one of those movies where it's like, "How have you never seen this?" You know, which for me, like I said earlier, probably would be Star Wars. I'd say, "How have you never seen Star Wars?" But for them, it was High School Musical. And so for the next, had to be hour and a half, all that went on, we're standing in their kitchen, and all that went on was my one friend, won't name any names because it was decently embarrassing, was just going through the plot and the story of High School Musical step by step for over an hour and a half, just singing every single song word for word, acting out in a kitchen, not a large kitchen, acting out every single scene, both sides of the songs, singing the male and female part of both songs. Now, I won't lie to you, I was standing in the corner, but was I singing along? Yes, I was singing along, because it's impossible not to. And so you've got this one friend who hasn't seen High School Musical, and the rest of the room, there's like 5 or 6 of us who are all, singing, we're all in this together and all of these great things. But I was thinking about it, they got to this song, like this song about the status quo. It happens in like the early middle part of this movie, and she started singing it, and I was thinking about it a lot while she was doing it, because the premise of the whole song is that they're singing and dancing in the lunchroom, and they're like, we need to maintain these little cliques of people. And so there's a basketball player who stands up and is like, hey, I like to bake, because that's a big deal for some reason. And they're like, no, you can't tell people that you bake. There's a nerdy girl that stands up and says, hey, I like hip hop. Again, not a big deal. But in this movie, huge deal for some reason. There's a skateboarder who says, I like to play the cello. And then he has to explain to the other skateboarders what a cello is. And this continues on and on. And we're watching these high schoolers. It's really a caricature of real high school culture. But we can also all agree that it's semi-true. While it's a caricature, that's also something that happens. It's something that does exist. I think we can all say that high school would be a place where you see little cliques of people forming, whether it's naturally or unnaturally. I think about my own experience and the ways that people who did different clubs would sit together sometimes in different sports depending on the season. So I remember me and some close friends of mine, like during football season, we would sit together. Then when it was baseball season, they would sit together. Baseball season was track season, and nobody really does track. So it was really just me and 2 or 3 other people. But depending on the time, people would sit with that, slight group. And that's something that we've all probably experienced in some way. People who live together in neighborhoods, people who enjoy similar things, sometimes will group together the natural formation of how things go. And this is timeless. Like, this is something that has always existed. People have always categorized themselves like this. A lot of the problem comes when, instead of grouping together because we all enjoy the same thing, what tends to happen is that we separate ourselves because we don't enjoy the same things as somebody else. And what that usually draws out of people is this desire and this pressure to change the way that they live and they act and that they think in order to get value from another group. So where one group then establishes and says, hey, you have to look and act and appear to be a certain way before we will accept you, or before we will even show you any value in our group. You can't be a part of this until you meet our standard. And that exists. That exists all over the world. It's a timeless truth that as long as cultures and societies have existed, it has existed. And it's been crushing and heavy and weighty on people, on us, for as long as we can remember. It's something that puts so much pressure on our hearts and our beings that it's so difficult to bring yourself out of that. It can be crushing at times. It can be weighing down on how we view ourselves and how we view our relationships to other people. But like I said, this is a timeless problem. This is something that has existed and likely will continue to exist for a while. So what we're going to read is a story of Jesus interacting with a man, a centurion, as we're going to read. And what we're going to see is, in their interaction, a lot of Jesus' response to this man. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home, paralyzed, suffering terribly. Jesus said to him, shall I come and heal him? The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed, and said to those following him, truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west, and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go, let it be done to you as you believed it would. And his servant was healed at that moment. So what we see here is a man labeled as a centurion. Now what that is it's a Roman official who has a decent amount of power. A centurion means that he is over charge of about 100 soldiers in this portion of their military. The century, 100, centurion, 100 men. And so he had a good amount of power regionally where they were. He was a figure of authority in the Roman government. And this is a big deal because the Roman government was historically an oppressive one to the people. And so how the people of that time would have viewed him is as a Roman official who tried to oppress them and put his power over them. And that's how they would have viewed a lot of the Roman government. They would have not enjoyed having this guy around. They would have had this kind of fearful respect of him where they know that they can't really cross him in any way because he's with the government and he has authority. And so there is probably some fear and some anger even with a lot of the people who would have known him at the time. But what we also see is this centurion coming to Jesus and coming before him and essentially saying, yeah, man, like, I'm not even worthy to have you come into my house. Even though I have this position of power, I'm not even worthy to have you come into my house. So just say it and it'll be done. He describes the authority that he has, and yet he for some reason sees Jesus as different. He says, oh, this guy doesn't care about my position of power. He doesn't care about the authority that I have. And he humbles himself and says, hey, like, I may have this power, but you are able to do something that I'm not able to do. And what's interesting is the people watching must have been intrigued at their interaction. They must have thought, well, this isn't going to go well. This is Jesus, the Jew, interacting with this Roman centurion. And so walking up, they're probably thinking, oh, there's some conflict that's going to happen here. Because Jesus, his whole ministry, he's proclaiming himself to be king. And so the centurion, as a Roman official, even going up to him in this way would have been dangerous. At minimum, possibly losing his job or his position of power or being reprimanded. But at the worst extreme, maybe death. This is a big deal. It's a dangerous venture for this centurion. And yet he goes and he does it anyways. And again, the people around them watching are thinking, this is strange. This isn't how things are supposed to be. And I wish it was as easy as High School Musical, that the centurion could just walk up and sing a song and dance and suddenly they're all friends. That would be the ideal situation, but that's just not the reality that they live in. That's where the caricature takes away from how these interactions typically work out between people. So the centurion, what he saw and what he believed, it said that he had faith unlike anyone else. So what did he have faith in? He had faith that Jesus was who he said he was. That Jesus was the whole time he was living, the way that he lived and the things that he was preaching and teaching to people was that if you want to have power, you need to serve people. So it's not a political power like people would have thought. If you want to be important, if you want to be the best, you are going to come and you're going to serve people. Which for them is, a cultural flip of what they're used to. They're used to powerful being oppressive to people and looking down on people and pressuring them. But what he's been teaching the whole time is that, no, in order to be the greatest of these, in order to be the best person, you are going to serve people. And that would have shaken up a lot of people, especially the centurion, because of his natural job. His role in the government was to be in charge of an army, watching over these people just in case, in this government. But he believed that Jesus was who he said he is. So he had faith that, Jesus, this guy is the king. And what he's saying is to serve people. And again, this flips the script. So like I said earlier, the question is, how does Jesus respond to the centurion? He doesn't respond and say, hey, you need to take off your Roman outfit. You need to put on regular people clothes. I assume he's in armor or something like that. So he doesn't say that you need to change the way you dress, and then you can come to me. Then you can come and show me what you have. But instead, he just comes to him. And Jesus' expectation is not that he comes, suddenly he leaves his job and he changes everything about what he does for work, or that he change the way he talks, or he change not talking about where he's from or his background. His expectation is not that. His expectation is that he comes as he is, and he just has faith in him. He just believes him. He just says, I believe in what you're saying. So that then when he comes in, he believes, then they can talk about how he's going to move on living from here on out. And this is, again, like I said earlier, it's timeless, because the same broken and hurting world that guy was living in is still the same one that we're living in. The same pressures that were on them and the same thought that people had to be a certain way before they approached Jesus was existing. It was present there. And so it's timeless for us in a sense that a lot of times that is still the pressure we feel. We feel that we can't come to somebody and be valued by them until we change ourselves, instead of approaching fully as we are and then being changed after that relationship. But Jesus flips the script. He flips this cultural and social norm that was heavy on people, and it was weighing them down, and it's still weighing us down today. Something that we wrestle with, because we want to be a part of a group. We want to be valued. We want to be cared about by people. And what a lot of the world says is, fit my mold before you come. And Jesus flips that. And that's what we see in his response. His heart is for people to come to him as they are, flipping the cultural script and saying, yes, come to me as you are, and then you will leave different. You will leave changed. That's Jesus' heart for people in these social situations, for people to wholly and authentically come to him and put all their chips in the basket and have faith in him, just like this centurion did. So what I'm going to ask us is a handful of questions, and then we can pray, and then we'll be done. So the first question is, what's weighing you down? What is crushing you? What is holding you back? The second question is, whose opinions change you, and why do they change you? The third is, how do you change who you are in order to fit in? How have you had tendencies to try to change who you are just to feel valued? The last one is, what is keeping you from being free of that? So now I can pray, and then we'll be done. Jesus, I thank you for this opportunity to come and talk about your word and your life, of who you are and the way that you want people to come to you authentically, that they will leave changed, but they just, all that you ask is faith, all that you want. There is no expectation of us having to be a certain way when we meet you. God, may that resonate with people. I hope that people can hear that and feel it in their bones, and that they will be changed because of it. God, I thank you for my friends that are watching and listening, that they may take this and talk about it and chew on it for a while and learn it. God, that you would make yourself known to them, and that we would have fantastic conversations about who you are. For all this in Jesus' name, amen.